Speaking of which, let's.
Not like you're about to make it sexual. I'd like to relieve her pressures.
Ah, yeah.
Depending who we're talking about.
Hello. Okay, we are live. Can I be heard? Woogity boogity.
Oh, I see you're playing a.
Huh?
It looked like you were playing a recording because I saw myself doing stuff that I did a little while ago.
Oh, yeah, I believe it.
Oh yeah.
So we became live before we became live.
Yeah, because I'm not doing.
Someone's watching us. That's for a split second. Someone saw us.
It was Rose or somebody.
Yeah, it's literally Rose. Wait, that's a good point. See, I'm gonna end up having to look at my phone anyway because Rose was going to be our guest at some point. Anyway, guys.
Pie wife.
My name is Chris Vella, and this is Steven Kirshner.
Hello.
And right now this show is called Coffee with New York City because we are going to talk about the state of New York City. Is there anything you'd like to say before I get started, if anything?
Not a whole lot. I'm Steven. I'm friends with Chris. I know him through Megan. For those who don't know, it's my I call her lipstick lesbian wife.
That's hilarious.
we met a number of years ago. We first started speaking online, and we eventually met in person. We've been hanging out since. I actually live near here in Hell's Kitchen, so I've been coming here for a little bit, hanging out with Chris. Chris and I decided to do this podcast. Initially, it was going to be about business, right? But
we'll talk about
business. Talk about it.
Yeah, because it inevitably comes up anyway. And really. Well, it's just sort of necessary for kind of the city to return to some sort of humanity. I'm not going to say normalcy.
Yeah.
Humanity that this new, I guess the mainstream narrative kind of traveled a little bit far from the truth. And then, and here we are, sort of, where they sterilized sort of our community of certain things, and we're left sort of in this post, quote unquote, whatever you want to call it, world. I don't even want to say it because there's an algorithm that'll like make it so even less people watch this if I say anything. However, I can say lockdown. These post-lockdowns world.
You can say coof too.
For yes, the coof, post-coof world. So yeah, and I'm sort of looking at like for instance, this guy eats out a lot. So and he used to manage a kitchen, I believe.
My last two jobs, I worked as a manager. My last job was a floor manager at Felidia, which now closed, unfortunately.
Right.
Italian place, and before that, where I met Megan, that was Netta. That was a sushi place. I was the assistant manager there.
And that's the kind of stuff I want to talk about. It's like looking at this city and looking at how kind of the ecosystem has died. Like it's like watching a garden that gets less water in its stream for a year, and you're forced to just be like, wow, I had no idea how much I love that bush. I thought it was just a bush, but really, there was life in that bush.
Places around me that I've been going regularly, all gone. You come back and there's just an empty storefront. It's, not the end of the world. I mean, a lot of restaurants here, but still, it's certain places that I went regularly and I enjoyed.
Yeah.
You just feel like part of your past is gone in a way.
I do feel like it's a little bit of the end of the world. I do feel like it feels like that. Like what is, if that's not it, then what are we really defining it as? We're defining it as like that abstract, but really those things that you rely on, that you do every day, that makes your world. And a lot of, I think it's very human to take that for granted, but I think it's also should be, or at least, but I think it's very human and very healthy to appreciate things, and I want to do that. I want to take some time every week to honestly, appreciate what's going on around me and try to share and try to help and all that. And it really does look like a lot of these lockdown things are coming to an end. The quote-unquote COVID war, I said it anyway,
The Koof War.
The Koof War is coming to an end at kind of the end of this month, the beginning of next month. Not for any other reason other than
Midterms.
probably midterms.
Yeah.
It seems to be some corporate move, which is a shame that I have to say that, but it's like, how did I find this out? Economic journals, and then the Pfizer guy ends up saying something, and then
Well, there was even an article I saw recently where they talked about why are we ending the COVID measures, and they said something about due to certain focus groups, pressure from them. It's like, well, that's basically admitting it's not.
it never was.
No, it wasn't like all the numbers dropped simultaneously and we decided to end them. It's, okay,
Yeah.
we know these are unhappy, we want to win the election, so we're going to repeal them, so, yeah.
And I sort of had to go through that as a young person with my philosophies and all that, going through college, where I had this sort of realization that I had to accept at some point, or I did accept, I guess, maybe I didn't have to, that like the experts don't know most of the things that we trust them to know.
Yeah.
Like that a regular person is educated to trust them to know. And even when they do know, certain people do know, a lot of people that are in charge of making decisions on behalf of lots of people aren't making decisions based on things that a lot of people actually already know. And you end up finding out that it just desensitizes you from that idea of, oh, this person is an expert, what they like, kind of the truth stops with what they say.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I don't think I believe anyone is like that anymore.
Well, Silas and I talk about this a lot, but one of the things we say is like, if you think about it, a lot of these people, I mean, they have speech writers, they have acting coaches, they have makeup artists, all this, and this isn't just politicians. I mean, this can be comedians, actors, whoever. Mm-hmm. And you realize when you take all that away, are they really that impressive people?
Yeah.
Like, they may be good looking, their delivery may be good, but if you actually break down what they're saying, or if you were to put them on their own and have them speak, it really wouldn't amount to that much. And it's for so long, I think people, as you say, kind of bought into it, but then it used to be that we only had a handful of news networks, which always painted these people in a positive light. But now there's alternative media, there's stuff leaked, all this. So now it's exposed, okay, this is what these people are actually about. And then that, Silas always uses the term, people forget the word glamour actually was associated with magic. Like, that magic is kind of gone because now it's all exposed.
Thank God.
Yeah. And it's a good thing, but it's harder to maintain that illusion because you don't have that controlled narrative anymore.
Absolutely. And you run a show with Silas. What's your show called? I'm sorry.
So it's on his channel. It's called Dying Alive. Now we have a few. We have a few different projects. He has a lot of solo videos on his own, just him speaking about issues. He will interview me usually about food-related stuff, and the recent one we're doing is called Great People I Know. You're, of course, welcome to come on, and anyone who's watching. Basically...
I don't deserve that, but maybe in a year or two.
Basically, we're interviewing people about careers or pastimes. So, for example, with me, he asked me about my restaurant background. My friend Jacqueline, he asked her about doing a PhD program in Taiwan. She's American, but... my friend moved to Costa Rica, he started a burger truck and now a restaurant, so we interviewed him about that.
That's badass.
A friend has a farm in Ohio, he's raising his own foie gras, so we're into things like this. So we're just asking, because I think Silas and I, we just want to learn more about other things. Silas has more of an atypical career background, so we just want to learn more about other people's careers and have fun in the process. And if other people like what we're doing, they're welcome to come on and we can just keep building it from there. So one of my friends, her boyfriend was interested in coming on, so maybe he can come on. Then if a friend of his who has something to talk about can come on.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we want to keep building it out like that, where it's like it's not just us and a few other people. It's okay, more and more people, and eventually maybe we could have 3 or 4 people on.
I just want to do something like that where we consciously try to get people more business, essentially. Yeah. Like it's okay if someone comes on their guest and they're not a business owner, and they're local anyway, and it's okay if someone, it's not about who can't come here. It's more like, oh, it feels necessary. It just feels super necessary.
And my thing too is don't feel like you don't have anything to talk about, because I mean people watch the Kardashians doing whatever. It's like if you have a business or something, or you're working on something, or you have some unusual hobby, I mean people like hearing about stuff like that.
That's a fact. That's what I was trying to tell our friend.
Yeah.
But what was I going to say? I was going to say You know what I was going to talk about as our first subject was the mask mandates and how officially, and this is interesting. So officially the mask mandates are gone.
Yeah.
Sort of. But then,
depending on the facility and everything.
and maybe I'm crazy because I don't pay so much attention to the news and I don't know, but do you feel like when they canceled that, they were kind of quiet about it?
Yeah, because they said they were expiring on the 10th. Originally, Hochul, our governor, said that, but there was no big fanfare or anything. She just came on the news and said, "Okay, we're canceling them for private businesses. However, you still need them for schools, hospitals. I think like homeless shelters. There's a few other things, but." I still walk around. I mean, I still see all these people in restaurants with masks. I see people on the street in the middle of nowhere wearing masks.
Right.
So what I'm wondering is how much of it is people not paying attention versus what percentage of people are just scared and feel like, okay, I have to do this until I have confirmation that this is no longer.
You know how quickly you could sue someone for trying to make you put a medical device on your face against your will? Do you know? Like, it's just funny.
I figured there were probably exemptions from that because of COVID, but like now it's like it's going to get to a point. I think it's just a peer pressure thing where it's like
people are more afraid of getting sued for like, oh well, I must have gotten my disease here because you guys don't even force everybody here to do this and that.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like really.
But what I'm wondering is, but I feel like when the mask came off last time, it was a peer pressure thing where it's like people like me just stop and you and me just stop wearing them, and then like you okay?
Sorry, yeah, fine.
And then the less hysterical people stop wearing them, and then on, and then there's like a few diehards who will wear them last minute, and eventually it's like, okay, you're one of a handful of people who still wears masks. And then it just,
I don't mind people wearing masks.
I said this recently on my Facebook. I'm like, if you want to wear a mask forever, I'm not going to stop you. But it's like, there's a certain point where it's like, do you really love having your face covevered all the time when it's not?
I don't think it's psychologically healthy. I think that to the degree you find it comfortable, and it's not that I never do, it's that, it's because you don't want to be seen.
Yeah.
I don't always want to be seen. I do think that giving people that kind of out for nothing is actually bad for them, and they are finding that it's bad for kids. That kids, unfortunately, I hate to say this, and I'm sure this is somehow reversible, to be honest, as an individual. Not everyone will think so, but they say that the kids born during this whole thing, they have like IQ points like 30 points lower.
30, wow.
Yeah, like
seems
quite
like a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot, and it's just because they're not able to see adults' faces, and so learn those social cues, and that's communication. That's a lot of how you learn to think, I guess. And I don't know what's going to happen, I don't know what that means. When I was a kid, I didn't speak for a little while, and they thought one thing or another, and I was just irritated.
Well, who was it? Was it Einstein or somebody you didn't speak to later, and there are a few other people as well? Yeah.
I believe it. Einstein, they thought he was disabled.
Was it? Well, I'm trying to remember if it was Mozart. There was one of the other geniuses. There was a similar story.
Mm-hmm.
I was always not Mozart.
Conscious, like, no, you're not going to pay me as like, I will pass the test. I will not communicate with you.
But that's the thing, and especially now, and then it's crazy because I wrote on Facebook that I gotta stop spending time on Twitter because there's so many crazies on there. But like, there are people, the FDA declined the chance to vaccinate small children, and I'm just like, guys, children have a 99.999 whatever survival rate, and then even if they get it, and then it's like, plus we still don't fully know all the side effects of these vaccines, so it's like tiny children with their bodies developing, and it's like. All these arguments are just contradictory and self.
It would be so hard to raise a child in this city.
But all these arguments are just contradictory and self-refuting because, like, if it's safe and effective, why are you terrified if other people don't have it? It's like everyone's had a chance to get it.
That was always the problem with the vaccine argument. That was always the problem with it. That was always what made you go,
Yeah. And then
with any single one, like the herd immunity argument was always. The idea of herd immunity comes from people sharing their immune systems naturally through things like saliva and such, and air and such. And they literally took that and applied it to vaccines.
Yeah.
And simply go, well, this is how that works. And literally, if you have to get your immune system from a vaccine, then you're not getting it for like it. They contradict sort of.
Well, all the arguments contradict because my thing is like
if you have once you have herd immunity, you no longer need the vaccine.
Yeah.
Your kids are gonna have the immunities that you have. But once you don't, if you don't, then you do need. So they would have only given it to us once, and we'd be good if it was like working with our systems, because our systems, we have metabolisms that work in cycles, and so they don't stop working unless you break them. And it's like we just totally forgot what science is. It's like we forgot what biology is. We forgot everything about like repeating, like cause and effect, like all science is. And don't get me wrong, like I understand not everyone being down with that. I understand not every parent like, understanding the scientific method and like all this. But now this whole situation brought this 100% out into the open, where all the stupidest arguments that some people thought didn't exist, they became the mainline argument.
Yeah.
5 years ago, and I'm still friends with him on Facebook, I ended up having this whole debate with a college professor, with kids and everything about vaccines, where he ended up not being able to show me an actual control study where they work more than 50% of the time. He never could. The other day, I saw he posted like, I'm in the hospital with blood clots. And I know why, and he knows why, and we don't argue about this anymore. He doesn't pretend I'm stupid or nothing. Like, what I'm saying is, in the real world, this is not actually like, once I proved it to him, that was it.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't fall on the sword like I do sometimes, but I do it to help people, and what? That's real life. In real life, these things have been going on for so long, and most people just don't pay enough attention to the point where I had to show the PhD, like, look, show me one study, because I can show you a study where it works like 35% of the time. Like I can, compared to people not getting it. And that's just a normal, that was like the HPV vaccine, I think the study was about. And that's one of the only control studies they even allowed of these things. And in science, that's very important, a control study, comparing it to nothing.
Yeah. Then you can just make up whatever to fill in the gap,
Yeah, and that's basically what they do. And so they've been doing this to kids on principle for so long, and now we have, I'm sorry, but we have a bunch of kids coming out with disabilities that they want us to believe are genetic, or they just have SIDS. Remember SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome?
Yeah.
Oh, he died of nothing. And these are things that past generations, they had kids die, like my grandparents' generation had like 30% on average, like birth death rate, because of just life in the environment they grew up in, not because of the culture, because of the lack of resources, let's say, and the generational poverty. But you died because you lacked something, you suffocated of exposure, of a lack of nutrition, something. It wasn't like, they died of nothing, but this thing we injected into them definitely had absolutely nothing to do with it, and that's why we don't check. Like, it's fucking absurd, and we really trust people to be taking care of our kids for us. And that's actually, like, on a viscerally animal level, dumb as fuck. Like, dumb as all fuck. And nobody, I'm sorry, I don't think it's sane to be offended by that.
Well, and also, the point I think it's Michael Malice always brings this up, like, especially conservatives, it's really bad for them because they complain about indoctrination, but it's like you're giving your kids up to your opponents, basically, and then you're complaining, why do they believe this? Well, who's indoctrinating them?
I don't even care if they don't have to be my opponents. You know that? They could be some imbecile. Like, this is a full human being that's incredibly, let's say, delicate compared to a normal human being.
Yeah.
That's all. So you have to be responsible, and you can't just act like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that's all. And I feel like when you trust someone else to do it, that's kind of what you're doing inevitably.
Yeah.
That's all. Like, I feel like that's just the choice you make. Like, and we all have gone through it. Like, I'm not trying to say, like, because I'm no better, I'm worse. I don't even have kids. By choice. By choice, I've chosen to avoid that so far in my life. So, I come from a place of condescension when I say this. You know, it's not easy to raise a kid exactly how you want, and who's to say how you want is best? It's not. Like, let's face it, nobody knows best. Like, it's best maybe in context for you, but that's the only best we can go for, and that's why you should have the right.
Yeah.
Because you should have the right to do your best and try to do better than your parents before you. So I'm not trying to come from a place, you know, this is just where I come from. This is just who I am. But it's like, wow, when you really, as a person who did what I thought I was supposed to do, not based on some arrogance, but based on like, okay, you know, I want to help. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to learn social sciences and physical sciences and, you know, all of this. And then you learn the cause and effect and you go, oh, nobody's trying to fix this. They're trying to make it worse. And they seem to think it's some sort of cultural enrichment to make it worse.
Well, because the politicians would be out of a job then. Like if welfare, like I think it was Reagan who said the point of welfare is to eradicate the need for its own existence. But the thing is,
that's in a logical world.
That's the whole point. But if you're a politician who wants votes, you keep stringing poor people along with this money. Oh, we're going to help you, and they keep voting, hoping eventually their lives are better. Meanwhile, they're dependent on you, and they just keep voting for you anyway. And people think that's a cynical view, but if you look into the effects of these policies, well, we've had over half a century, and we see the results.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, I think after a decade, like you said, you know whether or not your life is going to get better or not. Like, I think that there's a whole story to do with people in poverty and their families that they don't want us talking about. That's part of why they inject all of these narratives into these personal, intimate situations, these political narratives about, like, race and gender and all this and class, when really, like, it's often about, like, corruption and the reasons why some people do some things and the reasons why some people do other things, and there's no group of people above that. So what I'm trying to say is, okay, I'm sure there's lots of people that, like, well, first off, a lot of the people that quote unquote woke me up were demographically, specifically not the people they were supposed to be. Yeah. You know, it wasn't like some fucking guy in, it wasn't any type of, like, white person or redneck or even, it ended up being like black women and Hispanics and people just going, you know, I am that person that they say they're speaking for, and this is literally the opposite of what I think, and I think this based on my life experience. Yeah. So it's not that I'm trying to take the other side, it's that that's the only side telling the truth. So what am I supposed to say? Like, all these people are lying about me and spreading bad stereotypes about my type of person and acting like they're doing me a favor, and I'm actually I've taken lengths to not do that, because people like people say, assume this stereotype about me, so I push not to be that way and to show people I'm not that way, and now these people come out and say, oh, people who don't like people like that just hate the whole race, and it's like, well, I'm not like that. So what are you saying about me? I'm not in my race. And it's been like that. It's been like that since, like, honestly, it's been like that since as long as I've been alive. But when adults started telling me that, I always had friends that, like, oh, they were into something interesting, science or dorky something. It's like, oh, people will tell them they're white. Or if they speak a little bit too eloquently in English, people will tell them they're white. And I always knew that was obnoxious, you know. And but you think like, oh, that's some, like, thing kids deal with or something, you know, that these kids are just stupid. Like, I grew up with people in my classes sometimes that would, like, do something wrong and be like, oh, you know, when they get in trouble, oh, you're just being racist. And I remember that, like, and it stopped happening once I was, like, 10 years old, actually. Which is why when this shit started happening when I was, like, around this time, I was very surprised. I was like, well, this is something babies do. Like, literally. Like, I remember. But then I realized, oh shit, they got it from their parents. Like, their parents were like, this will work. Because it wouldn't have worked on their parents. Their parents are the same race as them. And here we are, and it did work to a degree. Like, to the point where it got really fucking stupid. And they were like, we declare victory, and they got people to kiss people's feet on the street.
Yeah.
And victory of what? Like, I'm sorry. Like, I actually really care about your situation, and these people, they want you in the most fucked up situation ever.
Yeah.
They want people to look at you like gangsters,
Yeah.
like villains by culture and race, which is actually like that's actually what people have to say about others before they exterminate them.
Yeah.
So you should be very weary of these people going, oh, they're just like that, and if you don't like things like that, we have to get rid of them all. So therefore, like, that's why the second they were like, oh, being gay is genetic, I was like, I'm not so sure. And even if that were true, why would that be the first thing you want to prove?
Yeah.
Because that would imply that somewhere there's this, like, basically won't reproduce gene that, of course, some psychopathic Darwinist would want to get rid of. Like, the type of people that think all character is genetic, like the type of people that will come up with that idea. But people don't, like, not even people don't think, people like that idea. People would rather it be a button. Like, people never got over the things that started World War II at all.
Yeah.
And we act like they did. We act like they did. Like, there was one group of, people that wanted to regulate all of society and the whole economy that were extra bad, and everyone else who wanted to do it, their concentration camps were just A-okay. And it's like, And as a New Yorker, I won't lie. I wish we did better through this whole thing. We are way too like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble, I'm gonna stay quiet through this whole thing. Like, I hate to say it, and I know that there's like an opportunist in the New Yorker that isn't really that bad. Like, that when we can help, when we can solve this, we will come out and we will solve this. And and it'll be hilarious watching them call the most diverse city on earth racist. It will be so funny. It'll be so important.
The reason New York State goes blue every election, I always point that out.
Yeah.
If this is racist, what's everything else?
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing I wanted to add on to what you said about class, I think that's important. I'm a big fan of Wilfred Riley. You've probably seen some of my posts from him. He's a political scientist, teaches in Kentucky, and he does actual work. I mean, he's not woke, obviously. He does good empirical work, and one of the things he showed is that if you look at black versus white differences, if you equalize all the variables, like, are there two parents in the household?
Yeah.
What's the income? What's the education level? If you equalize all those things, black versus white, the disparities basically vanish. Because that's the thing. He's making the point that a lot of these are,
of course.
But a lot of these are class differences. But
Yeah.
but if you listen to the media, they'll tell you
The media's Nazis.
Yeah, they'll just say
nowhere.
it's racism. It's racism.
Oh,
It's racism. And
it's
it's
the
like
race.
yeah. It's like
Maurice.
well, wait a minute. Are there two parents who are educated, making good money? Yeah, there's not going to be disparities. Is it a single mother in the inner city? Yeah, there's going to be disparities. But you have to factor in all those things. But his point is, by coming up with class-based solutions, these disparities would vanish further. But instead, they just keep gearing up. They keep ginning up. Oh, it's racism. It's racism. It's racism. Vote for us. We'll solve it. Then things just get worse.
What fucked me up was when I learned statistically that generational poverty in black people in America basically popped up with the welfare system.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
It was declining, and then
they were generationally mobile.
Yeah.
Doing good.
Yeah.
And then no, because of left wing, because of the socialists, and at first they said, oh, this is going to help you get up, because they were trying to at best take credit for it, take credit for what those people were already doing for themselves, because that looks good in the eyes of the average person. The average person is not a racist, regardless of what fucking made up world they live in.
Yeah.
So they wanted those political points, and then what happens is first they say, oh, this is going to solve the problem, and then you can see Thomas Sowell was arguing with them even back then.
Yeah.
In like 10 years, 15 years, they were like, oh, well, so what if it doesn't actually help them get back on their feet? What are you going to starve them to death?
Yeah.
Like, they basically act like they're their pets.
Yeah.
And the people who came in there, they were like, oh, I just want to get back on my feet. They're fucking gone.
Yeah.
When the key is there that maybe they did initially want to, and maybe they didn't.
Yeah.
And maybe they did get back on their feet. They have no reason to talk to us anymore. But there's definitely a large group of people that don't give a fuck if they get back on their feet.
Well, and I think
are actually really happy that they're taking advantage of a loophole in people's thought process, and are really happy that they like, oh, so every time I have a kid, I'll get more money.
Well,
so it's not even my responsibility.
I think you and I talked about this a little bit the other day, but this is what I was saying about, like, for those who don't know, I went to culinary school. I went to the Culinary Institute of America, and I've talked a lot for about a decade or so about how they kept lowering the standards. Like, to get in there, you used to have 2 years of solid restaurant experience and multiple recommendations. Then it became a year and a half, a year, 9 months, 6 months now, no experience. And I remember when I went there, I had a roommate whose restaurant experience was scooping snow cones for 6 months. In the past, that never would have flown at all. You had to actually work a hot line and get recommendations from chefs. And what I was saying is I drew a parallel between that and academia in general, where originally maybe they did want to educate people and put out good students, but then they became corrupted by all this money, and then it's, well, if we lower the standards, we can get more people, we can push them through, and we can just milk it as much as we can.
Like a factory trying to make money, like you said.
Because it used to be like 8 people in a class. When I left, it was 20 something. Some people said they had 25 in a class, so multiple times 3, and then lower standards for entry. I had chefs and teachers telling us, like, there are people in here who shouldn't be graduating, all that, but it's like, well, why are you graduating them? It's, well, the administration pressures them because they can't have too many people failing.
Yeah.
But then my thing is, like, in the real world, this doesn't work. Like, you won't open a business and say, these people shouldn't be here, they should be fired. No, you would just reprimand them and fire them if they don't, you don't just push people through the system. But then that shows they're not actually about educating people and having high standards. It's just taking money and pushing people along.
Not education or judgment.
No.
Neither. They won't bother.
And like I said, at one point they probably were about educating people, but it's just they became corrupt and they've strayed so far. And now education is like, a second or third goal. It's not their main reason they're doing it. No.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm checking on.
No, that's all right.
Rose has not responded to me by text, but that's okay. She can come next time.
Sure.
And she will see what this is, and she will make her decision. Rose's active articulation. Sorry.
Yeah.
And she does business consultations. She's definitely the best consultation service I've ever even heard of, because she actually pays attention to the character of your workforce and teaches you how to communicate with them in such a way that you actually fulfill your goals exactly more efficiently and more precisely. That's why she's called active articulation. She's a genius, but she will come when she comes around the mountain. So what was I saying?
We were just talking about, well, first welfare, but then college, how certain things became corrupt and they've strayed far from what they originally intended.
And you're talking about your experience, and I was talking about how there's kind of this story that they don't want to talk about going on and say what might be considered working class or lower class families. No disrespect, obviously, I'm speaking from my own. To be honest with you, what I was going to say is I can barely speak. Basically, my first thought is, what if I was someone who set out to be a very simple person? Now, I'm a very simple person by my tastes, but not by my career choice. Obviously, I chose to be someone that's interested in public relations and things like that, things like this, speaking to people, networking, helping people do business, advertising for them, helping them represent themselves. That's what I do. So I sort of end up being someone who has to pay attention to how things are organized. But what if I wasn't like that? What if I was someone who picked a very specific trade, let's say, and I expected things to go the way they should go? I make a certain amount of money, I can save up, I can buy this, I can have a family, I can do all this. And, the way things are presented to you very sincerely, they seem sincere, it seems very simple, or at least when I was growing up, it did like, oh, you can just get a job, you make a certain amount of money, and you can fulfill this role. And these people, we were talking about the welfare system before, they artificially inject themselves and act sort of like they represent caretaking and nurturing, and they specifically replace that with corporatism, and they inspire people to have entire families based on how much money they'll get out of it. And meanwhile, on the other hand, there are people who can't have families. For instance, like they have a kid and the father is there, but if they can't prove the father is not there, they won't get as much money.
Yeah.
So it's
well, one point too. Someone makes, what is Section 8 housing? Well, what happened to sections 1 through 7?
Right.
1 through 7 require a man in the present. Well, okay, if there's no man, you get more money. And,
right.
Yeah. So it's like there's things like that. Like you're incentivized not to get married because then you lose. And
the man's going to want to leave for your good, hypothetically, unless he can make more money than the government's providing you.
But then it's also
harsh and dark.
And what's dark too is that if you start making a certain amount of money, they take your benefits away, because that's an argument lefties make, is that, oh, welfare recipients work. I get that, but the thing is, they can't make above a certain amount or they get the money taken away.
Yeah.
So there's trapped in that point of you either have to find a way to make a lot of money, or you live off even less, or you just live off benefits. It's not like, I mean, ideally it would be, okay, you make a certain amount of money, you get some supplementation, then if you get a few raises, then you get off benefits entirely. But the problem is they don't allow that to happen.
Yeah. So basically I'm saying, had I been like most people I know, I feel like I would have fallen into all of the traps, because I am a very sincere person, very earnest. I might not always be forthright because I don't trust everyone, but and I have been called more than once. So what am I saying? So I think that there's a big story of people who are perfectly honest and are being taken advantage of, and the problem isn't like, oh, the system just automatically does that to poor people. It's like, it's the opposite. It's like we have specifically replaced these very important, intimate conventions, which are a part of a normal society, a normal like animals have it. Animals will have parenting methods and all of this, with specifically something designed not to be that, right? And the average person who needs that, the simple person who needs a supervisor, no disrespect, and I don't think there is any disrespect in that. Yeah. You don't need to fucking, like, even when you were a chef, did you mind not being in charge of the whole place before you were the supervisor or the manager?
No, because you realize it's that old Greek thing, learn to obey before you command. It's like, if you
that makes a lot of sense.
Solons of Athens, I think, said that, but it's the idea of like, if you had all the answers, you would just be running the place. But it's like, and that's why I would get annoyed at culinary school and restaurants, like people who cooked for a little bit and thought they knew everything. It's like, it's like you're not running a top restaurant somewhere. If you were that good, you'd be doing that already.
Yeah, and it's no disrespect. Honestly, the most respectable thing is to be able to actually be part of any productive activity at all, regardless of which part you can be. Like you are, because you're accepted into the group as what you really are.
Yeah.
That's why they go, oh, you're objectifying me, like it's an insult, because inevitably being an object is a dimension of your character.
Yeah.
So if the moment people mention what they see and what they actually physically, can see, you're going to get offended. You're never going to be able to have a conversation. They've cut you off at the root.
Yeah.
And that's what they did to you. So now you can't talk about anything, and we're in the most diverse. Like, we're wondering why the trade city of the world is all fucking crippled right now. Well, the people in charge of the culture, they're ashamed of how, like why isn't everyone in their own, special part of the zoo? It's like nobody knows how to, like, they forgot. And the people who do know how to say it are smart enough not to want to get in trouble and get sued and get screwed and get lynched by these psychopaths who think that everyone should be in a goddamn zoo.
Yeah.
And they're killing the fucking city.
Yeah.
And they deserve it. They deserve to know. Like, this beautiful, diverse thing, the way you are, you can't have it. You can't have nice things, the things you think are nice. And people who fucking don't even think it's as nice, they can be a part of it without even noticing. Anyway, so that's one half. If I was like a normal person, I'd get screwed and not even really understand and be like, am I stupid or does nobody care in higher society, you know? Like, is all the shit I heard about, you know, how sensitive they are to me, bullshit? Right?
Well, look at the whole mask mandates. I mean, how many people have, look at how many people have cheered masks but violate them. I mean, you have, you know, Lori Lightfoot.
You can't help but
Lori Lightfoot
because it doesn't make any sense.
Yes, Obama, AOC. I mean, everybody. And then it's like, and then because these are the same people who are like, oh, even once I'm vaccinated, I'll wear the mask no matter what. But they're all seen at events without masks on. It's like. And then it's the whole thing of like, well, if it really worked, wouldn't you be doing it? And if it doesn't work, well, do you actually believe what you're saying? And then it's like, you know,
it was never about that.
No, but then these are the people we're supposed to look up to and follow, and it's like, you know.
But what actually happened to me was, like I said, I went to college. It wasn't a crazy, you know, it was Hostos Community College, okay? But I took objective courses, not philosophy courses. The most philosophy course I took was what? It was classical African civilization class, and I actually learned quite a bit about history in Africa, so I'm down, to be honest with you. And I learned about hieroglyphs and all that, but I learned about economics, and I learned about political science, and I learned about, literally I did take a sociology class, which time has taught me was, I'm glad I didn't take more than one. Basically what I'm trying to say is that as what I actually turned out to be, not a completely normal person, someone who took some of the bullshit seriously when I was a kid, and was like, and also felt like, you know, I love people, I want to help, I feel like I can try, you know, because not everyone cares to, not everyone's happy to, so the people who are happy to should be the ones who do it.
Yeah.
So what? So I got in there and I was like, so what really works? So I can solve the problems, you know, fix the system from the inside, because though my philosophy was always like, well, people should have all the rights, I was raised in New York City by these public schools and all that. Don't get me wrong, I have both parents, but you know, they teach us, especially with immigrant parents, I'm going to learn about America from the schools, and they basically taught us that the reason why both parties are doing big government is because that's all that works, right? So you get to college and you expect to find out the nitty-gritty of that. You expect to find out, like, okay, what parts work and what parts don't. None of it works.
No.
None of it. 0 parts. Hypothetically, the war part works, but really not the war part. The soldier part works. And the fact that that guy was actually motivated enough to kill somebody. Like, literally none of it works. 0, 0, 0, unless you count the most fucked up parts, which lefties, at least when I was growing up, weren't down with. But I guess it was just, if you put an American flag on it, if you put a rainbow flag on it, then, you know, nuke all the brown people, I guess.
Well, it's the recurring point about how the left used to be anti-establishment, and then once they took over all the institutions, they took over big tech, academia, Hollywood, et cetera, they just are the establishment, and they still, you know, the rank and file lefties still act like, oh, we're fighting for the little guy, and it's like, no, you are the establishment. It's just they don't realize it.
Well, yeah, and they screwed it up. They screwed up the narrative, you know, because, and like I said, I took a political science course, so I learned some basics, some classical truths, and it turns out right-wing always represented less or no government, and left-wing always represented more government, right? So there was a time when 99 to 100% of governments on Earth and throughout history were monarchies. The alternative was an emperor, which was a monarch who declared himself monarch of monarchs, right?
Yeah.
So the left wing was people going, okay, how do we regulate things? How should a governor govern, right?
Yeah.
And the right wing was people going, no, people should be free, screw that. And so America ends up being very right-wing. What ends up happening is the French Revolution. So the French Revolution happens, and so people take over France that are not the royals. So the government all of a sudden does not consider itself socially conservative. they're still very socially conservative. They consider everyone who agrees with them to be fucking the most disposable people, the most the people you can ignore for absolutely anything. Which, in science and political science, that's just generally what happens.
Yeah.
Like, of course, if you want to govern everything, if you do not want people to be able to freely associate and voluntarily work, then it's because you have a problem on some level, but because you're a person that's social, you have a problem with some decision that they're going to make freely, their culture.
Yeah.
And the right winger is a social liberal, and this has been, and that's why, and I can sing you a song. Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni. You know, and what is that? What's that? That's about how Americans were considered cultureless and stupid to the majority of the world. And it's like, oh, you're gonna call that a government? Where's the king? Ha ha ha. Oh, human rights from what's that? And that's the same arguments basically that they tell us today. Actually,
I was gonna say the Europeans. I get flack for like, oh, what do you mean you don't trust the government? Oh, these Europeans are laughing at you. You know, why don't you trust the government? I'm like,
they're laughing at us from their
because I know how government operates. I know what the agendas of the people.
They're
in power
laughing
are.
at us on cue when the sign comes on. Laugh. Like literally.
Oh, you're one of the cool people who laughs now. Yeah. Well, that's. Have you heard the term? Have you heard the expression "clapter"?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Well, that's because of the comedians Colbert, Oliver, whoever you want to pick. That's what they do. It's like, okay,
they're
everybody.
Not jokes anymore. I can't watch them anymore.
No, it's not even humor. It's just like, okay, everybody. Here's what you're supposed to agree with now. I'm going to talk in this smug tone. Now you should applaud, and then everyone just applauds because it's like it's signaling. Oh yeah, this is what the cool people believe. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, man. Yeah, but that's so true. Yeah.
Because notice, but I mean, even just notice the visceral reaction. Like, okay, as a kid, I used to watch The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air all the time.
Oh, I love Fresh Prince.
And the thing is, that was done in front of an audience, and if you notice, the laughter varies because it's an actual audience laughing.
Yeah.
Like that's why it's organic. Whereas this, it's like The Big Bang Theory they make fun of because they had to play a laugh track. If you watch it without, it's really strange. Like it's like you know it's being forced. Whereas this was actually like, oh, this is funny, so people are naturally reacting and. You know, jokes that are mildly funny a little bit, and the jokes that are really funny, everyone laughs, and then people applaud.
We should get an automated laugh track so that our audience knows when I deem it credible for them to laugh.
Yeah. Versus, again, you would hear people saying, oh, you'd hear people cheering. Like, it was actually reflective of, like, a group of people reacting.
Yeah.
And there were even a few scenes where, like, I know Carlton ran out into the audience and you actually see everybody laughing, but you know it's genuine. It's not. You know.
Now I gotta watch Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
I have the whole series on Amazon. Actually, I downloaded it. Yeah.
That's the correct decision.
I've watched enough of the episodes even multiple times, so I'm like, I'll just pay for the whole thing.
Yeah. I have some stuff on YouTube. I'll be honest.
Because I've seen a lot of clips on YouTube, but it's hard to get the whole episodes, and there were a lot of like.
Yeah, you gotta pay for I don't know if Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is on there, but you can pay for stuff.
Well, for me, it's like you can just buy the seasons and like you buy like it's not the physical DVDs, but it's just all the episodes, and it's just like you can just watch them whenever. So
I haven't heard back from Rose.
All right.
And that's okay. She'll come next time, and I'll spread this around, and we will have like an audience by next week.
This was a little last minute too, because it was like so
it's Noble Savage. That's what it is.
Yeah.
We just kind of fuck around and find out. But we're not bad people.
I like to think so.
Find out nice things. Yeah. So you get there and you learn basically, instead of being like, "Am I stupid?" Nobody's trying to help. I thought people were sensitive. Yeah. You actually meet the guys, and they tell you, and they try to make a face. If they know you care, they try to make a face like they care, but they don't have it in them. So the most that they can do is this very like dry kind of whimper, because I've been there more than once, and what they tell you is basically like, oh, we have to do it this way because people won't even try to help each other if they don't. You know, they don't, but basically there's no actual sincere people, like around me, that's like impossible to find in government. Literally impossible, because they would be telling everyone they work with, like literally your job is redundant.
Yeah.
Totally redundant.
Yeah.
And that's a fucked up thing to do to the people you're working with. Yeah. I actually agree with that. You know, that's why I would never work with these people. I have to be straight with you. It's because it doesn't help. And to do what does help, I would have to go in there and demystify the whole goddamn thing and be like, listen, people with funny hats do not have magic powers.
No.
That's like, you know, like, and it applies to everything that you could call a funny hat. And unfortunately, yeah, like, yeah.
Well,
they've just been addicting people to lies.
Trying to understand when I've been trying to understand the left wing view, especially including among friends and family member, what I realized is that they're still sort of in that mystified, like the government is some sacred entity staffed with heroic people that care about us, and then if you criticize them, you're basically criticizing their gods. That's why they get defensive. But I see it as like, okay, these people are not that special. It's just you've gone to government institutions, you've listened to media with ties to people in government who have told you how great these people are. But you break that illusion. It's like you realize they're not. You know,
the idea that the left wing is socially liberal is based on the idea that the royals do not want to govern anything anymore.
Yeah.
And that they don't want regulation, and the royals actually got there through free trade and by producing some magical, you know, artifact that we just can't see, and that if we just stopped paying for them for nothing and treating them like religious artifacts or some shit, that they would just take over through their raw genetic superiority. Like, it's absolute stupidity.
Yeah.
The idea that, like, oh, you know, the only way to accept other people is to maintain this zoo where they're not allowed outside. It's like, no, that's the opposite of fucking true. Like, watch Bubble Boy. You'll learn a lot fucking more than you learned in your social sciences class. I apologize, but legitimate. Have you seen Bubble Boy?
I've not, no.
So Bubble Boy, you don't mind if I spoil it for you?
No, go ahead.
It's like a 90s comedy. It's very like Smash Mouth or whatever.
Yeah.
It's basically this kid, he's born, and the doctors tell his mother, look, he's got no immune system. He's got a special thing. It's not AIDS, you know, it's just like he's born without it. And so he's got to live in a bubble. And he lives in a bubble all his life, and he ends up being like 18 or something, and he's still basically a child because his mother, you know, feminine Oedipal complex, has been keeping him there all his life. And spoilers, he gained an immune system at like 3, and she's just been hiding it from him. And spoilers, he's actually still a completely normal person because everything it took to be a completely normal person was already in him. So the movie is about him getting out and accepting himself and accepting reality and accepting his mother and accepting people and gaining confidence and realizing even though something has never happened before, it doesn't mean it'll never happen. Like, a lot of the things, like, they just, like, the entire idea of they act like it's a statistical fact that people are born in the same economic demographic that they die in. And if that's true, that's because both children and the elderly aren't working. It has nothing to do with gathering wealth. And throughout the middle of people's lives, they're in a completely different economic class.
Well, that's what Thomas Sowell talks about, because they always talk about income inequality, but he makes the point that these are categories of earners. These are not flesh and blood people. Like for example, my grandfather early on did okay, and then he worked his way up to regional manager, but most of the money went towards his kids, but then he had a pension, investments, all that. And then by the time he died, he made more money in retirement than he did working, which he thought was crazy, but because he had pensions, he had stock options from his job, he had investments that kept growing, etc. Mm-hmm. So it's like, but he as a kid, he was upper middle class and he made decent money, but it was all going to bills, and then he was wealthy at the end of his life. And then similar story with my parents, like they've invested, inheritance, all that. And then for me, it's like I'm on my way up too, you know. I like to think, but that's the thing. It's like
it's like I like to think, but you never know in this dance.
But it's like you're not. But the thing is, you're not stuck in this. Like, it's not like, okay, you're making close to minimum wage. That's the case forever. It's like you can move up. Yeah,
close.
And it's just, but they frame it like, oh, in this quality, if you're in this category, you're just stuck here for the rest of your life, and it's not true.
It's not true at all, and it's visibly not true by the time you're 30. Like that saying that they say where it's like, oh, if you're not a lefty when you're young, you have no heart, and if you're not a right winger when you're older, you have no brain.
Yeah.
It's because you go through your life, and I'm telling kids too. I'll tell you kids if you're watching, okay? And thank you for dealing with me. Everyone who deals with me. Steven's great. I'm like sharp as fuck. And I mean sharp like cheese. I don't mean smart.
Sharp cheddar.
Yeah, like I'm an acquired taste. I'm saying that. See, I already forgot what I was.
Well, so you were talking about how as you get in your 30s, people become more because it's like
you see throughout your life,
Yeah.
like there's a difference between people, and it's not like and because he was from a rich family and all that. Like, I don't think I know anyone who is well off today whose parents were well off. Everyone I know whose parents were rich, legitimately, they are like chronically poor and unhappy. Yeah. Like in bad relationships and drug addicts, and legitimately, like, I'm sorry, and I like them. They're actually usually nice people, and it's like, wow, that's interesting that this person, there's nothing wrong with their character. It just seems like they just don't know how to be responsible, you know. And then there's people, for instance, well, I've known Steven for a little while in person, but basically most people, everyone I know that's about, and maybe it's because I'm from New York City or anything, but everyone I know that has something to be proud of in anything economic, they made it themselves out of hard work and honestly, having a target, having a specific goal in mind that they finish off, and then they're willing to take care of it. And I've never met anyone that's like, oh, because their parents. Everyone I know that did something, even their parents weren't very well off. They were just okay. They were college educated, lawyers, you know, not like landowners or some a mansion. Even those people, I'm sorry, are in dead-end situations. And I feel like, wow, we need to wake these people up. These aren't stupid people. But it's like, they literally lie to you in school about what works on record, psychologically, statistically, economically, sociologically, lie to you through their teeth with a little paper like I am qualified to educate children. Yeah. And you see with your own eyes, oh, that person that just does what they're told, nobody ever told them what would make them advance in life, because people are threatened by you advancing in life. And not only that, but people can't decide for you what your goals are and what you're willing to dedicate your life to, because that's actually a fucked up thing for another person to decide for you, and no one who cares about you would really decide that for you. So the first thing they taught you about how you were supposed to be was the opposite of how you were supposed to be, and now you don't even know how to be happy.
Well, I realized this in high school, like the idea that having a credential next to your name doesn't prove you're smart. It just means you're good at, like, obviously it depends on what it is. Obviously, if you go through medical school or physics at MIT, you have to be smart. But my point is, a lot of the people, like especially ones I grew up with, you know, won't mention names here, but it's like, these people got good grades because they're good at doing what an authority tells them and memorizing things. Like, these are not innovators. These are not, like, I don't foresee these people being the next Tesla or whoever, because it's like Tesla had to actually like come up with stuff on his own, think outside the box and all this. And these people, it's like you memorize what an authority told you, you got a good grade, and you basically been trained to trust authority and do what authority tells you because you were rewarded for doing that. And yeah, in an academic setting that works, but in the real world, I mean, that's that line about a lot of A students end up working for D students. Like, what did Elon Musk say about,
dude,
like,
I'm a D student.
Yeah, like
until I got to college.
What did Musk say about I didn't go to Harvard, but people who work for me did? Because that's the thing. It's like, if you have the innovation, you have the ideas, that's how you make money, that's how you succeed. It's like, if you just do what other people tell you, it's like, that's
I got
you.
really good SAT scores. I'm good at testing. I just don't do homework.
But that's useful for an employer. But like, you're not gonna like change the game in any meaningful way, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you feel, Steven? You feel like going another like half hour, or you feel like you're done?
I think we could wrap up pretty soon.
Yeah, because like, you know, we're about to reach an hour.
It's about an hour,
we're good. Yeah. Maybe like when we actually have an audience, we'll stay longer.
Yeah. Well, we can get other people on, and we can plan a little, because like this is just kind of. Oh, well, thanks for having me. Yeah, because I mean, this was just kind of a off the cuff thing. Like I didn't have a specific topic in mind.
Steven is the man. Look how stable he is. So stable. Women know. How many wives do you have, Stephen?
About 15.
Emperor Stephen. In 1,000 years, everyone in America is gonna have that face.
Oh, that's scary.
This is a joke, by the way.
Oh, so do you want me to explain the origin behind the wives thing for the audience? Okay.
So they know you're not a polygamist, and then we'll wrap up. Thanks for coming, guys.
So the joke was that I dated this woman who had some jealousy issues, so she had nicknames for my different female friends. So my friend Dina, her nickname was Sister Wife, and the joke behind that was because people had said we should date and marry, but we're just good friends, so she's like a sister but a wife. But she's also religious. She's not Mormon, by the way, but she's religious. So the joke was that she called her...
We're already hilarious. Because it's going to be like, why does that matter?
So hold on. So then Rose, who we were just talking about a minute ago, there was this whole thing with her and my ex where she brought me pie at my job, and my ex thought she was making a move on me, so she started calling her.
So
pie.
she noticed she was making a move. I'm joking.
So she started calling her. Pie lady or pie.
Nice.
And then a while later, after I broke up with her and everything, I was hanging out with Abraham, my friend, and our friends, and he goes, Steven had this jealous, possessive girlfriend who had nicknames for his different female friends. He goes, Sister Wife, Pie Wife, and then I was like, so then. Sometime later, I was posting on Facebook about my different ancestry, and my friend Ryan Underhill says, I'm descended from Mediterranean sailors and whatever salt wives they took. And I said, salt wife? I go, I have a sister wife and a pie wife. Now I need a salt wife. So I wrote that as a status. Wow. So our friend Ray goes, well, I live near a lake of salt or something. And then my friend Kathleen goes, can I be whiskey wife? My friend Laura messages me saying, and a wine wife. And then I'm like, all right, who else do I include? And I just came up with this list of names.
I feel like, someone just, I think, offered to, let me see, sorry.
No, that's all right.
It's okay. That is hilarious.
Yeah. And it just kept expanding from there, so.
Good. Someone needs a space, and I'm just saying yes. All right. Yeah, this guy's fucking, I was going to make a joke. What was I going to say? I was going to say,
wives,
do you mind if I joke on this whole idea worse than you will? Because I was going to say, hey man, that's a very respectable name to give your pie slave. And we'll end on that because I'm just joking, guys. I love you. I love women of all sexes. Because I have to say that now. Because we don't have meanings to our words anymore. Bye, guys. I love you.
Bye, thank you.
That's how I'm going to end it with a